All right, here we are. Yes, you're right. It's been a while. Uh, I've been busy, but also I've been thinking, and I I set up this video about a week ago, and I was going to do this topic, and changed my mind. Came back here, sat down, changed my mind again. Wasn't sure what I wanted to say, and then I wasn't sure I wanted to say it. So here we are. Betrayal. This is complicated. This is a complicated topic. It's not even. It's almost like, why bother, right? Well, Why would I be bothered to do this? It's not clear to me that I have. It's not clear to me that this has to be discussed or spoken of or said in any way. But we have been betrayed. It is colossal. I don't think that humanity has been set up for this level of betrayal in hundreds of thousands of years. I don't even think that humans were capable until now of this level of catastrophic, mutually suicidal betrayal. Here we are. In the future, they're going to want to do some finger pointing. In the future, they're going to deconstruct what happened. In the future, 10 years from now. And they're going to want to know, when did we drop the ball? Who dropped the ball? Whose fault was it that we ended up where we are now, 10 years in the future? They're looking back from where they are 10 years in the future. And it's complicated, but it was absolutely an act of global, frankly, genocidal betrayal. Let me show you some goodies, some things. Nothing I haven't shown before, but we have to review. Before I do that, let's take a look at my book. It was 100 Days. The link is available in the description. My speculative fiction, a novel that takes place over 100 days, is rapidly becoming a documentary. That's all I can. That's the best way to put it. It's rapidly becoming a documentary. It starts out with speculation about how everyone was living their best possible life, and then there was a problem in the Persian Gulf, and then somehow, mysteriously, the oil wells were cut off, and the gas disappeared, and the pumps went dry, and then the food wasn't delivered, and that was all day zero. And then we get to start counting the 100 days of how people survive. It's kind of a user's manual. It's not The Road. It's not Mad Max. It's actually, in a way, when I was writing it, I felt optimistic. I felt, okay, these people are going to make it. They have to do it in 100 days, but I think there's a way they can do it in 100 days. And I gave them that long, and probably that was generous. To be honest, it may be more like 50 days or maybe less. If you haven't figured it out in 50 days, then you're probably not going to make it. But I gave these people 100 days, and by the end of 100 days, they had kind of figured it out. How to reorganize themselves. How to reorganize themselves after the end of civilization. Like I said, it really is a user's manual. You really do need to grab a copy of this, okay? It's as simple as that. The link is in the description. I did this for you people, okay? I didn't do it for me. Well, I did. It helped me organize my own thoughts by writing it. As they'll tell you, if you want to know a topic really well, teach it to someone else. That's how you do it. So I wrote a book, and in the process, I gave myself time to think about things. Yeah, please grab a copy. I'd like to know that you did that. Okay, that would make me feel better about everything I'm about to say. That you did that. But that's not what we're going to do today. What we're doing today, at least for now, is this. This is a marine heat wave. This is today's data. Let me just go down here and make sure that it is. Yes, this is today's data. These are sea surface temperature anomalies. Anomalies mean it's anomalously hot or anomalously cold. It's a departure from average. Everything on here that's colored black or very faint shade of blue or faint shade of red is basically average, and everything else that's intensely shaded, intensely red or intensely blue is an aberration. And please notice, a long story short, there's virtually nothing that is intensely cold. Everything is either barely average or intensely hot. This is the global marine heat wave. This is it. This is what we got, folks. This is data as of whenever they took the satellite photos. Yesterday, probably? Yeah, maybe yesterday. And we have a massive El Nino coming. What they keep telling us, it's going to be a barnstormer. It's going to be bad. It's going to hurt. So we'll come back to this. We'll come back to this later. I'm going to show you what a strong El Nino looks like. We had one in the years 2015 to 2016. So I'm just going to change the map date to, I have a little calendar app here, from 2026 to 2016, same month, same day. This does look different, doesn't it? There's still some heat in the oceans, but there's also large patches of blue and purple. Remember, that's anomalously cold. But we have to be careful here. That's probably average, because the average for this data set was recorded well into global heating. So probably everything in here, everything in this view is probably already above average by 2016, according to a long-term average. But that's not what this data is. So we are showing cold patches, but you can think of those as being, well, they're still relatively cool compared to the oceans under the impact of global heating in 2016. So even the cool patches are hot relative to a proper average, but we don't have a proper average. This is what we have. And what I want to point out before I get to the rest of the video, I want to point out this region right here. This is a strong El Nino in the South Pacific. We're not quite there yet. Ours is forming right now. It should turn out any time now. Middle of the summer is when it's expected to arrive. Strong El Nino brings heat to the South Pacific, and it changes weather patterns over much of the world because it's a large area of heat that then impacts the world. I'm going to go back 2 more years to 2014 before the strong El Nino, and this is what the planet looked like in 2014. So we're out of El Nino territory. This should be average. There's a lot of areas of blue and purple, and there's some bright areas of red and yellow where obviously heat had accumulated in the oceans. But now I'm going to jump forward to today, literally today, this year, this month, this day, and you can see the difference. Did you see that? For those who are just listening, the map went from about equal areas of cool and hot, and the hots weren't really hot and the cools were pretty cool, to just hot. The whole map is hot. The whole surface of the Earth, the ocean surface of the Earth, which is, as probably most people know, is 3/4 of the Earth. And actually, it's also 90% of the heat absorption that the Earth has acquired during global heating ends up in the oceans. So here we go. This is the story now. And once again, I'll grab my pen and I'll draw in the South Pacific. This is going to be the area where the El Nino comes in. And it's not there yet, but it will be. And then this picture, again, changes remarkably. The reason I'm doing this video today, and the reason why the video it's titled Betrayal, is because this picture right here of the ocean temperatures and the departures from average, which even the average is hot. This departure from that average is basically a portrait of the end of the human world. Not the end of the world, but the end of the human world. And I want to make that distinction right away. The human world is made up of civilization, driving, flying, moving goods, manufacturing, modern agriculture, modern medicine, modern transportation, the internet, the plastics, the penicillin. All that's the human world. Infrastructure, you get electricity delivered to your home, and water, and food to your neighborhood, and sewer taken away to a sewer treatment plant, right? And this is all the infrastructure, this is all the human world, this is all the gearing made possible for us by copious applications of fossil fuels. every day, all the time, 24/7 for 100% of everything that happens in the human world. And that has to stop. The fossil fuel flow has to stop because of this picture. Because we're in big trouble. We're in big trouble. And I don't know how it's going to stop. I don't know how or even when, really, but it will probably be soon, and it will probably be catastrophic. It has to be. Because the people who run this planet for their benefit and ours, although, of course, mostly theirs, they know this. They've seen this picture. They know what's going down. They know what's going on. They know what's happening. And they don't need me to tell them. They've known this for decades. They made sure that we passed the Paris Climate Accords in 2015, and all the nations in the world signed the Paris Climate Accords because they knew. They orchestrated that. They made sure that happened. Nothing came of it because we were betrayed. The Paris Climate Accords was an act of betrayal. But they felt they had to do something, so they did that. It wasn't enough, because here we are. Here we are in hothouse Earth. And this is basically the end. Okay, let's look at this chart. I like data, okay? I just like data. 2024 was a very hot year. It came on the heels of 2023, which was kind of literally off the chart, at least the last half of it. 2024 carried that on for a while, and 2025, things got a little bit better. Now 2026 is back, and I don't know, maybe you can see here on this data over on the left, 2026 started in January here, and it's going up, and it's going up, and it's going up. And guess what it's going to do? It's just going to keep going up. I don't know where it goes. I don't know what the temperature is going to be, but we are headed into, I don't know what, the end of the world. It's just going to be so much pain and so much suffering. And we were betrayed. We were allowed to do this. So now let's talk about betrayal. Let's talk about who it was that did this, shall we? Scientists have known about this since the 1800s. They knew this was coming. They didn't know when, and they didn't know how it would play out specifically, but they knew this was coming. There was a woman, actually, I learned this just recently. My wife apparently already knew it because she laughed when I told her what I just discovered. This woman named Foote, Foote, F-O-O-T-E, Foote. I can't remember. She was an American. I can't remember her first name. Eloise or something like that, some old-timey name. And she did experiments with thermometers and test tubes full of different gases, one of which was CO2. And she noticed that CO2 could accumulate heat. It was instrumental. She wasn't guessing. She just did the experiments like you do, right? Collecting data, observations like you do. And her work, of course, was completely ignored. However, John Tyndall, who was an Irishman, came along 4 or 5 years later, probably knew nothing about what she was doing, but obviously there was a group of people, including Mrs. Foote and also John Tyndall, who were cogitating on this topic. So in parallel, or maybe he stole her work, or maybe he read her work, and she did get published for her work. Maybe he read her work. She was in America, he was in Ireland, but maybe they read the same publications. And he decided to do some work, John Tyndall. And he also decided that a greenhouse gas, carbon dioxide, was a very powerful greenhouse gas, and he is recognized for that. Svante Arrhenius, a Swede, I think, and I believe the great-grandfather, maybe even great-great-grandfather of Greta Thunberg. So it kind of runs in the family, I guess. Anyway, Svante Arrhenius was noticing by then, this is late 1800s now, so much coal was being burned in the beginning of the Industrial Revolution that Svante Arrhenius said, oh, this is going to be a problem because this coal burning is releasing CO2 into the atmosphere. And he could literally see it. The amount of coal being burned was so catastrophic that you couldn't breathe the air in places like London. And when you get to a point where you kind of can't breathe the air from the coal dust and the smoke, then you start thinking, well, I wonder what else we're fucking up. And so he did some calculations, as you do. And he knew how much coal was being dug out of the ground, how much of it is being burnt, what it's being used for, how much we burn per year. He did a calculation, and he says, oh yeah, this is going to change the temperature of the Earth through the greenhouse effect, which Fourier discovered, or at least theorized about, in the early 1800s. So in the beginning with the early 1800s, people were thinking about this. And to some extent, they were exploring the world, but they were also just kind of noticing what was happening in the human world. Again, the human world. And they were putting two and two together and having discussions about what effect is this going to have. The energy companies, mostly here in the US, mostly the fossil fuel companies, became aware that things were probably going to change. Things were maybe going to be impacted by their product being used. Okay, now it's not Svante or Arrhenius looking at the smoke from the massive burning of coal. Now it's our energy companies working with crude oil and gasoline and diesel, looking at all the cars on the road. Oh, and there were problems with Los Angeles, for example. You couldn't breathe the air. Gee, doesn't that sound familiar? So they started looking at what impact their product might have. And they had their own scientists, and they gave their scientists the assignment, and they came up with catastrophic global warming. And so they suppressed that work. They kept it to themselves, which is fine. They're a company, they're a corporation. They hired the scientists, they paid for the work. It's their report. They're not obliged to share their results. And so they kept it. But some years later, other scientists also working in the field, again, people start to think about these things all at the same time. It's very mysterious. They started looking at it outside of corporate America. As soon as the fossil fuel industries recognized that scientists that they did not control started to look at the same question and coming up with similar answers like, this is bad, okay? Then they started working on those people. And they've been working on the science community ever since. Can I blame the fossil fuel industry for trying to suppress and pervert global system science? No, I can't really. That's their job. That's their job as a corporation. And you shouldn't allow corporations to run your life because they will fuck you. Okay? But we did. And we did because we liked it. Of course we did. It was driving, it was flying, it was cheap. Gasoline was 17 cents a gallon. Cars were big and covered with chrome, and the seats inside were the most comfortable chair you owned. And there was an AM radio, and there was an air conditioner, and you could do all these things, and you went down the road, going 70 miles an hour, looking like the stud monkey at the county fair. Of course they liked it. Suburbs, vacations, pulling a trailer up to Yosemite and getting out and putting out your folding chair and drinking a beer. And they loved it. They loved it. And the energy companies loved selling them the gasoline, even at 17 cents a gallon. And the auto industry loved selling them the cars. And the tire industries loved putting new tires on your Chrysler. And the states and the counties made the roads and all the asphalt and all the traffic signals and all the highway patrol and all the everything else. And the bridges and the winding roads up into the mountains on the wide asphalt belts and all this stuff. And the service stations and then the malls and then the more suburbs over here and more suburbs over there. Everybody loved it. They loved it. Now, it was an easy sell. It was really easy to sell this dream of the human world. But they knew. Now, when I first found out about this, I was working through my master's degree, and my emphasis was ecology, and I was studying ecosystems. Yeah, I had to study flowers, and I had to study primates and evolution, all the other things. That's how you get a degree in biology. But my emphasis was on ecosystems. I was probably ahead of my time, to be honest. But I took all the ecology classes I could take, and I took all the classes on mathematical techniques, and I learned how to program computers. And this was a long time ago. We were coding computers, the mainframe computer, in Fortran. Okay, this was a long time ago. But I was doing all this stuff and really enjoying it. And I was seeing where all this was headed, and I was looking forward to getting into it. And our college professor came in one day, and he said, I'm going to change the topic here today a little bit. And he showed us a picture. He put it up on the projector, right? The old transparency projectors where there was a glass base and a mirror, and it would project an image up on the wall or up on a screen. So he put this transparency on here, and he showed it to us. It's what we now call the Keeling curve. Data on CO2 collected on the top of the Mauna Loa volcano, which is an extinct volcano. I don't know anything about it, but anyway, they had a observatory up there, and they had a weather research center up there, and they were looking at CO2 levels in the atmosphere. I wonder why they were doing that. Well, it's because it was already 30 years into a project. Of course, now it's 80 years into the same project. It's 30 years into a project to monitor CO2 levels in the atmosphere, because they knew. And in 1990, when I was kind of halfway through my master's degree, our class, it was a small class, it's just, it was graduate students. And so we were 6 or 8 of us sitting around. And so we talked about the Keeling curve, and he did what a professor will do. He opened it up. What do you think about this? He told us what it was, of course. Now, what do you think about this data? And we hemmed and we hawed, and we didn't really know what to make of it. It was CO2 levels increasing in the atmosphere due to carbon emissions. And we knew about the carbon cycle. Of course, you learn that in undergraduate biology. We knew about the carbon cycle, and we knew about the role that plants play in the carbon cycle, and the importance of plants and biology in general, plants and animals and microbes. And so we got introduced to this, and I never forgot that. We didn't really talk about the greenhouse effect. We didn't really talk about where the CO2 is coming from. Of course, there wasn't any politics involved back then. This was just science. It's just data. I mean, the energy industries were trying to suppress this. Oh, and being entirely successful, by the way. So there was that. That's why, for us biologists, this was our first exposure to the data. And after this, we got things like James Hansen from Goddard giving testimony before Congress. And then we had Al Gore and his Inconvenient Truth, and all this, all this stuff was filtering out. And there was plenty of places along the way when humanity could have said, "Oh, wow, we're doing this. Well, that's not good." And we could reference the work of Svante Arrhenius, his concerns, and the work of Madam Foote and John Tyndall, and we could say, "Oh, wow, so okay, we've known about this a long time. Maybe we have a responsibility to do something about this finally." But we didn't. We didn't have those conversations at all. And after Al Gore did his thing, and people hate Al Gore, whatever, he's a politician, and this is when the politics started. Of course, the energy companies tarred and feathered him. Of course, the Republicans, they just want economic growth, and they tarred and feathered Al Gore. He's a Democrat, I think. Yeah, pretty sure. But he's a Southern Democrat, so practically a Republican. And all this stuff. And so it became a joke, Al Gore, and why doesn't he stop driving? Why doesn't he live in a smaller house? He lives in a mansion. Blah, de, blah, de, blah. Okay, so fine. We did nothing. We were allowed not to do anything. We were required not to do anything. We were allowed to sweep it under the rug. And for most people, and this is going to be a thread through this entire bitch session on my part, the thread is people liked that answer. People liked that answer. People like adult humans, by and large, are just grown-up children. They still want the same things that children want. And they also, like children, want to avoid responsibilities. They want to avoid things that disturb them. They don't want to have to. They don't want to have to do things that are uncomfortable or require thought or are risky or maybe make them look bad or cause them to give up on some of their cherished beliefs and experiences and lifestyle choices. Of course, adults are like, they're like, adults are always adults. And it makes it even worse if they have children of their own, because they want their children to have the best things and have the best vacations, including 3 times a year to Disneyland, and and they want their children to fly and to drive and to consume the goods and go to the places and watch the movies and eat the foods, and they want everything the best for their children. So by the time you're an adult, not only are you still a child about all the things you like, now you're a child for all the things your children like. You're not going to cut that off or limit that or endanger that in any way. It's just whatever you want all the time. So it was easy for the energy companies to sell the idea to adults that the best thing for you is to just keep doing what you're doing, business as usual. Don't deviate. Don't worry about it. The scientists, and then the line was always something along the lines of, well, the scientists have an agenda. The scientists can't know everything. The science has been wrong before about all kinds of things. Scientists predict a future ice age, which was true. And, so who are you going to believe? And also, the science is not complete. We need more data. Even the scientists will tell you we need more data. More on the scientists in a bit. The scientists will tell you we need more data. The scientists will tell you we need to study this. We need more studies. We need to go to Antarctica. We need to go to the Arctic. We need to stand on the glaciers. We need to study the glaciers. We need to study the ice shields and to measure the water and go out on ships and look at the seals and look at the gulls and look at the penguins and study the thing. And so scientists that was the right answer for them. Business as usual was the right answer for scientists too. And the politicians didn't want to touch this. They did not want to touch this, because to tell people, well, you're going to have to do less. And the thing you're going to have to do less of is burn fossil fuels. And most people didn't even know what fossil fuels were or how they interact with that area of the human world. But if they started asking, well, what does that mean in practical terms? What do we have to do or do differently? The answer would have been less driving, or maybe no driving, no flying. You're going to have your food closer to home. You can't be shipping food in trucks and airplanes and cargo planes and cargo ships from all over the world. You're going to have to use less fuels to move your food. So that means more farmland around your cities and towns and suburbs. And I don't know, some of you might have to become farmers again. And so they didn't tell the people those things, because the politicians didn't want to deal with the people hearing those words. Because less driving and less flying and fewer goods in the stores and more people working on farms, that sounds like medieval times, right? That sounds like going backwards. You're going to take away all my fun? You're going to take away all my vacations, my trips to Disneyland 3 times a year? You're going to take all that stuff away from me? For what? For Al Gore? So they didn't. They didn't mention it. I don't know. They're cowards. And let's just be fair. As soon as, politicians started having, what do they call it, congressional hearings and things like that, and they start talking about global warming and global climate change and all these things, well, of course, the fossil fuel companies show up with, stacks of $100 bills, and literally, that's exactly what happened. Literal $100 bills in actual bags, not checks. We're not writing checks because that leaves a paper trail. Let's just hand out the $100 bills. And they managed to convince people, again, not difficult, that, there's people with $100 bills telling you, don't worry about it. So that was the right answer. You mean, if I promise not to worry about this, you're going to give me money? Let me see. How do I feel about that? Okay. And do you start to sense the levels of betrayal here? They knew. They've known since the 1800s. They started doing actual research on Mauna Loa volcano, looking at the data. Well, that's interesting. And then when it started to affect certain companies' profits and the products they could sell, they did their own research. And they found out, yeah, it's true. So we have to get out ahead of this. So they did. So they went to Congress. They started handing out money. Don't worry about it. I got more of this. How much more do you need to not worry about this? And it worked. It worked. So who's wrong in that situation? Was it the fossil fuel companies for doing business? Was it the politicians who were representing a constituent, a wealthy company, or actually a wealthy industry? These are industry-wide efforts, okay? Or were they even representing the Joe and Jane Sixpack, who probably just wanted a happy story? Just wanted to know that everything was going to be a pat on the head. Don't worry your little self. Yes, I know this scary Al Gore. Don't worry your little self. He'll go away. Of course, they wanted a happy story. They wanted an adult fairy tale. They wanted that. And when someone came along and told them an adult fairy tale about how everything's going to be fine, don't worry, happy ending, they gobbled it up. Until today. And what happened today? Well, you see, here's how it is, folks. I don't know how to break this to you, so I'm just going to tell you straight up. Physics doesn't care. Arrhenius knew that. Foote knew that. Tyndall knew that. Fourier knew that. Everybody who came after them knew that. And even the scientists at the fossil fuel companies, the energy companies knew that. They knew that physics doesn't care what we think or what story we want to tell ourselves and each other. Physics doesn't care. If someone can convince you that gravity is fake, and they can convince you to jump out of an airplane without a parachute, and what's their story going to be? Gravity is fake, so you're just going to fly like a balloon. You're just going to float. Woohoo! Okay, and you think that's a great story. You like that fairy tale, and so you go to the back of the plane, and the door opens, and you jump out, and you say, "Hey, I'm floating. I'm a balloon now." Physics doesn't care what you believe. Physics doesn't care what that guy told you to get you on that airplane and watch you jump out of the airplane without a parachute. And why would you even want that? Physics doesn't care. And as soon as you jump out of the airplane without a parachute, you belong to physics. You belong to gravity. And gravity grabs you and hurls you to the earth, the source of gravity, and you splat and you are dead. Because physics doesn't care what you think. So here we are. March 28th, the year 2026. And we've got this shit going on. This is the end of the human world. This is the marine heat wave. Soon to be worse because of a Godzilla El Nino. It's going to arrive in the middle of the summer. This never goes away, people. All this red, all this yellow, all this white, this never goes away. It only gets worse. Because that's physics. The Earth is heating. It's significantly warmer than it should be if we had left it alone. The oceans are significantly warmer than they should be had we left the Earth alone. Had we stopped burning fossil fuels. This would not be the case. So what kind of life would we have if this were not the case? What kind of life would we have had we stopped burning fossil fuels in the 70s or perhaps the 80s? I don't know. What were we doing in the 70s? Well, we were driving and flying and manufacturing, and America was a manufacturing powerhouse, and we didn't have a bunch of Donald Trumps saying everything was a hoax, and that was the 70s, right? There was some great rock music. That was the 70s. So if we had stayed in the 70s, that's what we'd be doing right now. And you wouldn't be listening to me, and you wouldn't be looking at this map, and I wouldn't be telling you that the human world is finished because of this. Okay? Here we are. And we have been betrayed. We have been betrayed. It's a rogues gallery of participants. We were betrayed by powerful corporations who put quarterly profits before human well-being. Why they did that? Greed. I don't think they took any joy in lying to us. I think they just felt they had to. And then we were betrayed by politicians who are supposed to represent us, who are supposed to steer us out of harm's way and into a better future for all. And, even in the 70s when all this started to land, we were living a pretty decent life, most of us, certainly in the West. And there was the opportunity to roll that out to the rest of the world slowly over time. The Second World War was behind us. We were in the Cold War, but nothing had happened, right? There was no nuclear annihilation in 1970. So maybe it'll be okay. The future was not bad. People right now are looking nostalgically at the 80s. Like, man, that was the last time life on planet Earth had any meaning. Anybody knew anybody else. People went to each other's homes and had parties and had block parties and had cookouts and went camping. And that was the last decade when people could live human lives without fear and without paranoia. People have been getting nostalgic about the 80s. Even people that weren't even alive in the 80s are getting nostalgic for the 80s. Because, yeah, that's right. That was better than this. And this picture of the global marine heat wave didn't exist. And now we're fucked. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, God, we're in so much trouble right now, people. I don't even know. No, that's not true. I do know. Before I get to what I know, let's continue with betrayal, shall we? Who else betrayed us? The media. The media was present when James Hansen gave his testimony before Congress. The media was certainly present when Al Gore revealed his material on An Inconvenient Truth. He got some airtime. He published a book. There was a documentary. There was a movie in the theaters. A bunch of other stuff. Media was there. And then they totally dropped the ball. Because corporate media began to realize that while you can sell some of the existential dread about global heating, it was called global warming at the time. We know better now. While you could sell some magazines and movie tickets about the existential dread associated with global warming, after a while it started looking a little bit threatening to their corporate models, because they don't want people to stop driving and flying and buying goods and buying materials and going to the mall and vacationing at Disneyland. They don't want that kind of stuff. They want business as usual with an emphasis on business. Okay? The media wants business because they're in business. So did they betray us? Certainly. The energy companies betrayed us. They had a good reason. The politicians betrayed us for various reasons. Most of it greed. The media companies betrayed us for all the same reasons. Who else? I'll tell you who else. Academia. And by extension, science betrayed us. Like I said, I was there. How to say this? After I got my master's degree and entered the field of biology, I did some work for, I don't want to go into the details. I did a lot of professional biology. And while I was doing professional biology, I learned about how scientists make money doing professional biology. And it's a business. It kind of has to be. Money's hard to come by. It used to be, back when in the days of Arrhenius and Foote and Tyndall and all the others, these were wealthy people doing science in their spare time with their own money a lot of the time. Not always, but a lot of the time. Or they had professorships or endowed chairs or something at a university, and they had some money, and so they used their income to go do science, because that's what they were doing. They were doing science. And a lot of it was just frontier science, like, wonder what this is about. Better measure this, better do some work with this and figure out what's going on here. And, that's how they discovered that there was a greenhouse effect. That's how they discovered that CO2 is a greenhouse gas. And that's how they discovered that anything you do to add CO2 to the atmosphere is going to be a bad thing. But a lot of that they paid for themselves. Science was the realm of the elites. Well, until it wasn't. Until we had universities in almost every town, junior colleges everywhere else, cranking out scientists, cranking out people who wanted to work for the U.S. government, wanted to work for corporations, and then science became a business, as you do. Now, some of that emphasis on science was because of the experiences of the Second World War. The Second World War was the first war of modern technology. There was radar. There was aluminum planes. There was weapons of mass destruction, including nerve gases, and of course, as we all know, the atomic bomb. And then we went right into the Cold War, where there was all this competition for all this technology. And there was Sputnik, and then there was the moon launches, and then there was all this other stuff. So there was a huge demand for people in sciences and engineering and all the allied fields, mathematicians, physicists, astrophysicists, the whole thing. So the universities were cranking out scientists, but those people, not all of them went to work for NASA, not all of them went to work for the government or for universities, and a lot of them, probably most of them, got jobs in industry. Or doing field work and getting grants. And the grants also come from industry. So it became a business. And when your business depends on you, hustling and trying to find grants and trying to find graduate students and trying to find projects, then you don't question a lot of things. You don't ask difficult questions. And you certainly don't bite the hand that feeds you. And so a lot of science has become mercantile. I want a project that I can get a big grant on, hopefully from the U.S. government or some other government, the European Union or whatever. Get a nice grant at a 10-year project, so I don't have to do this again next year. A 10-year project, and they were looking for ways to create a business around doing research. And there were certain things you couldn't touch. And in the beginning, it wasn't global heating as such, but there were things you couldn't touch, like you couldn't really touch environmental issues. You couldn't come up with research results that would point to that company over there and say, you see, their pollutant is causing harm to the planet and therefore to the people and the animals and other things. So that kind of research was a little difficult to get funded. Also, cancer research. That company over there has a product that's causing cancers, and we need to stop that because we don't know how to stop cancers without stopping environmental pollutants. So people got into trouble trying to do research that pointed at corporations or at government agencies that were working with corporations, supposed to be monitoring them, but not doing it very well. And so science and basic research became dangerous. Dangerous. You could destroy your career. If you did the wrong kind of research, came up with the wrong kind of results, pointing at the wrong kind of villains. So you didn't do those things. And when I was doing field work as a biologist, that was already in process. Fast forward to today. Now I'm going to say something here about the Trump administration, but I want to preface this by saying that this has been going on a long time. Clinton did it, Obama did it, the Bushes did it, they all did it. And what they did was they did not have the adult conversation about global heating and the role that fossil fuel consumption and carbon emissions played in increasing the temperature of the earth. They did not have that discussion. Now, they were happy to talk about green technology. Joe Biden, who had 1 4-year term, although he was vice president before that. Joe Biden passed his Inflation Reduction Act. It was called the Inflation Reduction Act because that gets people attention. Oh, inflation, that's obviously bad. But it contained a lot of measures in it that were trying to green the economy, sell more, move more solar panels, install more solar panels, more wind energy. Not bad things to be doing, Not a solution, by the way, but not bad things to be doing. And, you know, he never had the conversation. He never had the conversation that I'm having with you right now, that we're fucking up. You want to install solar panels, you want to encourage electric car purchases, you want to encourage the installation of charging stations, you want to have, you know, LED lights in the homes and more insulation in the walls, you want to do all these things, and that's all fine and good, but he never had the conversation. Nobody did. They never had the conversation that we're fucking up and we're continuing to fuck up. And we went from, over the course of a few decades, we went from all of humanity consuming 20 million barrels of crude oil a day. 20 million barrels, not gallons or liters. 20 million barrels of crude oil daily, not annually, daily. We went from burning 20 million barrels of crude oil daily to 50 million to 100 million, and now we're well over 100 million. I think it's like 104. It probably is closer to 120. I haven't seen the numbers lately. Frankly, I don't even care anymore. You see the progression. That's all that matters. The arrow points up. The arrow points up, and it points up strongly. Okay, this is a moonshot. We're going all the way to whatever, 120 million barrels per oil daily, every single day. Can you even picture 100 million barrels of oil in one place? What the actual fuck? If you saw that, that would be a mountain. That would be a pyramid. Maybe even 4 or 5 pyramids of oil drums full of oil. Daily. Every day. And all of that is burned every single day. And that every single year it increases. And we find more uses for these products. And there's more people using these products. And more of it comes out of the ground. And every year it's worse. And every year our situation gets worse. Until here we are with this picture of a global marine heat wave caused by atmospheric contamination with CO2, enhancing the greenhouse effect, warming the planet. And 90% of that heat goes into the oceans. 10% is still sensible. Oh, and by the way, 2 weeks ago, we started a heat wave here in the lower 48 states of the U.S. That was supposed to last about 4 days. Absolutely breathtakingly bad. Sinister. A sinister heat wave. Discombobulating. Evil heat wave. Seeing temperatures in March that not only broke records for March temperatures by like 20 degrees Fahrenheit in places, but also would have been hot days in summer. We were seeing temperatures in March that would have been hot for summer, like June. And that 4-day event, this is key. This is key. You won't get it. Most people wouldn't get this. I'm just going to say it. It was supposed to be a 4-day event. It became 10 days. And now it's looking like 2 weeks. Now, that's interesting, don't you think? They didn't see that coming, did they? And that's the key to this whole thing. And it's why I'm here right now. We're in trouble. We are in big trouble right now. I have a pretty active imagination. I wrote a book. It was 100 Days, in which people are in big fucking trouble. And we're in trouble. I gave a lot of thought to this. It took me a year to write that book. I put all kinds of thought into that book. What's trouble look like? How is it going to feel? How are people going to react? What are they going to be afraid of? What are going to be their opportunities? What are going to be the threats? Okay? How's it going to feel to be these people over the course of 100 days trying not to die? It's worse than that. We're in a situation now that is worse than that. People are going to die. They don't really need to, although I guess, really, actually, I'm going to say it. We're here to have the adult conversation, people. People are going to die. And they need to. I don't feel good about that. But most of humanity over the next 10 years is going to perish. There's no way around it. There's no saving these people. There's no way to save me. There's no way to save you. There's no guarantee. Unless you're Jeff Bezos and you've got a spare $1 billion laying around to save yourself, it's just going to be a random thing. Whether you and I and that person just drove by and that person walking down the sidewalk, it's just going to be kind of a random thing if these people survive. It might even be kind of a random thing if Jeff Bezos survives, or Elon Musk, or any of the others who are right now scrambling around trying to get their story straight for how they're going to survive this, because they are trying to find a way to survive this. The irony, though. The irony. Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, billionaire, bought land in Hawaii. And I think he bought land in Hawaii, made himself a big compound there to escape the mainland. Basically thinking of Hawaii as his fortress of solitude, where he could escape the masses when the shit finally went down. Ironically, Hawaii just suffered the worst rainfall event they've seen. People keep claiming it's 20 years, but I doubt that. Probably more like 100 years. The worst rainfall event they've seen. Washed out the roads, washed out the houses, destroyed the businesses, destroyed the airports, water everywhere, polluted water too, sewer water, right? The sewers overflowed and the whole thing, and you couldn't swim in the water, in the ocean, because it had sewer in it. They had an absolute disaster. They were saying it was going to be a $1 billion event, probably more like $2 billion to fix it. And they won't, by the way. They won't fix it. You know, it's an island. They don't have resources. Everything they need to fix has to be hauled in on cargo ships or hauled in on cargo planes and delivered to the port and distributed to the wealthy people who are the ones who can fix things first. And is Mark Zuckerberg going to fix his compound and move back in there? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. So, ironically enough, he went to Hawaii to build himself a compound so that he and Oprah could escape the angry mobs in the future. And they just got destroyed by global heating. They just got destroyed because that storm was 100% attributable to global heating, and I don't even have to run the numbers. It's just how the system is set up now. The system is set up for these kinds of events. And we've been having them on the mainland in the 48 states, and we were having something similar in Alaska. In fact, there was a point during the winter, the so-called winter, the warmest winter on record, the so-called winter, when Alaska, the state of Alaska, was warmer than the state of Florida. That happened. That was a thing, people. That was a thing. That really happened. Betrayal. We didn't have the adult conversation. We didn't talk about this as adults. Hey, you don't have to be a scientist to talk about this. You just have to be receptive to knowledge and data. Oh, but the science isn't settled and it's all a hoax. Well, yes, I know. This is, if you're an average adult, I'm 67, you're probably 50, so you're a little younger than me. If you're the average adult, you've been hearing for the last 40 years, since the oil companies became worried about this shit, you've been hearing nothing for the last 50 years except that it's a hoax. It's a hoax. It's an agenda. It's a conspiracy. You can't trust scientists or Irma Gerd. They're just greedy and they want money and they're fear mongers. You know that, right? And that Al Gore, who cares what he says? He's a fear monger too. And it's all communism, socialism. And they're trying to defeat democracy and take away our freedoms, take away our guns and take away our money and take away our bank accounts and make us live in mud huts and do all these kinds of things. It's terrible. Don't listen to these people, blah, 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 blah. So we didn't listen to them. Easy sell. And I'm sitting on here and I'm telling you, oh man, yeah, you're pretty well screwed at this point. There's no way out now. It's going down. Oh, but it's a hoax and it's a conspiracy and you're a fearmonger. Okay. I'm trying to unwind 50 years, 60 years of betrayal. I'm trying to do that here, okay? I'm trying to do the mea culpa. I'm trying to say, yes, in 1990, I saw the chart. In 1990, I could have taken a stand. Of course, I wouldn't have gone anywhere. I wouldn't have done anything. But, I could have, and I didn't. I became a field biologist, and then I became a technologist, and now I'm living in Silicon Valley, and I worked with all these pin-headed tech bros, and taking over the world and coming up with social media and all this stuff that's going to break everybody's brain. And I did that instead. Okay. Well, now I'm back. Okay, now I'm back, and I'm trying to set things straight. Do I get anything for that? Do I get any warm fuzzies for trying? No, that's fine. I'm not on here for the warm fuzzies. I'm on here for confession. Well, I was there. I knew, along with everybody else in my field. And, we drove and we flew and we took vacations. I've never been to Disneyland, okay? There, I got 1 point for me. Betrayal. There's enough to go around. And in the end, and it's still happening to this day, even though this is the picture, even though this is the thing that's going to wipe people out, meaning most of humanity, this is the thing that ends the human world. Even though this is going on, to this very day, people are in denial. Even with data, even with strange events happening in the real world of physics, wacky weather whiplash, catastrophic collapse of the ice sheets, collapse of the AMOC, coral bleaching, what else? Sea level rise, flooding in South Florida, blah, 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 blah. Tornado outbreaks. We're supposed to have tornado outbreaks later this week in the U.S. South and Southeast. Well, actually, most of the country east of the Rockies will be looking at possible tornado outbreaks. But, we're not going to have the talk, are we? And in the end, although people are supposed to be smart, and people are supposed to be able to detect when they're in danger, situational awareness, right? We're supposed to be good at that. We hear bumps in the night. We hear the crack of a stick in the forest, and we pay attention to things like that. We're aware of our situation, our vulnerability, and we're worried about things that go bump in the night, and shadows moving in shadows, and we're situationally aware, supposedly. Homo sapiens, my big brain. What's all this about? What's all this for? Pattern matching. And yet, we refuse to see this. So, it's going to kill us. Now, in fairness, there's no way to reverse this. This is the marine heat wave. This never goes away. Oh, it'll shift and it'll move around, and maybe some years it'll be worse than others, but the heat, once it's in the ocean, there's really nowhere for it to go. And the heat, once it's in the planetary system, there's nowhere for it to go. It can do work. It can evaporate water and form clouds. It can melt ice. But with every passing year, there's less ice to melt. And with every passing year, it just gets hotter and hotter. There's no way out. We can't escape this. And now we're going to find out what it's going to do to us. And people will just walk into that blindly. And I guess I'm okay with that. I guess I have to be okay with that. You've been betrayed. I know that. And I know when it started, and I know how it's proceeded. And, my field, science, has a little something to do with that, because we turned science into a business. Well-intentioned, right? Focusing on progress and new products and all the other things, and improving life and the quality of life, and expanding, modernity into more corners of the planet to accommodate more people. And in the process of doing that, we now have 8,000 million people. 8,000 million people. 8,000 million people. That's equivalent to 8 billion. We have 8,000 million people. This planet, probably, at the best of times, so it would have been maybe the Bronze Age, this planet probably has a carrying capacity of about 250 million humans doing human things. Oxen, plows, horses, drawing carts, simple weapons, simple steel implements for agriculture, scythes and bill hooks and things like that. Simple construction methods using whatever's in the environment, right? Straw, willow branches, mud, limestone, maybe granite and field stones and some other things, right? If you want to carve wood, you can do that. If you want to carve stone into shapes and stack those shapes up and make beautiful buildings, some of which, of course, still last to this day, you can do that too. Back in the Bronze Age, back in the early Iron Age, you could do that. And there was 250 million people on the earth, and they were not consuming fossil fuels. They consumed a lot of wood, and they cleared a lot of forests. So it's not obvious that the earth can support 250 million people doing what people did back then. But they did that, and so maybe this earth can accommodate 250 million people. Okay, that's about 3% of the current population. 3%. 3 out of 100 could survive in the collapse of civilization. If we were to collapse from 8,000 million humans to 250 million humans, that would be approximately 97 people out of 100 would perish. And I don't think it stops there. Remember, I'm an ecologist. Carrying capacity is something I think about a lot. And when humans were filling the earth, discovering the continents, discovering the trade routes, sailing the seas and primitive craft and plying the rivers and finding the things to eat and discovering new materials and discovering metals like copper and silver and gold, when we were doing all that, we were expanding into a healthy planet. There were gigantic herds of animals in Africa, gigantic herds of animals in North America. We were expanding into primeval forests, never seen humanity before. And there were trees we could cut, and there was ground that we could till, and there was pristine rivers and springs and lakes that we could draw water from. It was all open to us. We were 250 million, 300 million people expanding into essentially the Garden of Eden, relatively speaking. Well, now, 8,000 million of us, we have filled all that, destroyed much of it. The water is polluted. There are nuclear power plants everywhere, just waiting to go off like grenades. There's chemical plants in exactly the same situation. We've paved over with asphalt and concrete, fertile lands, and we've polluted the waters, drained the lakes, destroyed all that, killed all the animals. Something like 97% of the biomass of animal life that's not domesticated is gone. Not 97% of species, 97% of the weight of the wild animals is gone because we killed them. We killed them. We didn't mean to. Or maybe we did. We killed them. They're gone. We ate them. We destroyed their habitat. We paved over their nursing grounds or whatever we did. And this world is not pristine anymore. We're not expanding into a Garden of Eden, just ready for us to find uses for all the natural resources and all the clean things that would nurture us and our children. Now we're 8,000 million. We have turned the earth into a chemical dump, and we've destroyed all the resources. There are no enormous forests. All the herds are gone. It's just people now. And we have our domesticated cattle and domesticated sheep and pigs and chickens and turkeys and everything else. And they're not going to survive this. Because like us, they are dependent every single day, every minute of every day on modern agriculture. Their water, their food, their medications, right? Just like us. They need medications. Their water, their food, their medications. And then, of course, we have to manage them with fences and equipment and bring the food in and dump the food, and they eat the food, and then we take away the wastes and all these things. And it's just modern agriculture. It's just industrialized agriculture. It doesn't continue without fossil fuels. It doesn't. There's nowhere for it to go. It just evaporates. That's why I wrote the book. You see, it evaporates. And as a consequence of we can't sustain this, as a consequence of the earth has become a chemical dump, because it is, as a consequence of the earth being covered with essentially landmines, chemical plants, nuclear plants, ammunition dumps, all of the infrastructure that we can currently manage but won't be able to in the future, then those areas become uninhabitable for all purposes, including our own. I don't think we emerge with 3% of the current population, going back to how it was, say, in the Iron Age, when we were just expanding into the planet and discovering all the resources. I don't think we're going to be privileged to get out of this with that level of population. No, I don't think so. I think we're fucked. Seriously. We're in a bad place right now, people. We're in a very bad place. It's very precarious. We're all of us crowded at the edge of a cliff, and I just had a glance over the edge, and I'm looking down there. I'm like, yep, that's where we're going. That looks like a long way, and those rocks look really sharp, and that's where I'm at. I don't think we get to have 250 million people when this is done, as it will be shortly. We have been betrayed into a massive fatality event. Massive. This planet has never seen a die-off like this. Okay. Only exception. 65 million years ago, when the Chicxulub impactor hit the Yucatan in Mexico and destroyed all the dinosaurs. We don't really know how long that took, but the entire assemblage of dinosaurs, and that's not one species, that's an entire assemblage of animals, vanished in the course of a decade or something like that. We might be on the par of that. That may be where we're headed. However, I think that humans right now are more abundant on Earth than the dinosaurs were when it was their turn. So, yes, we are about to experience a die-off and a reduction in biomass that has never been seen before. And fossil fuels is our meteor. And we did this to ourselves. We could have stopped. Probably not. We could have tried to stop in the 70s. We could have trusted the science. We could have told the media, don't lie about the science. We could have told the fossil fuel industries, don't say bad things about the science. We could have told the politicians, this is the science. We could have had education campaigns in schools and taught the children about the science. Well, we didn't, because we didn't want to. We liked business as usual. And any threat to business as usual was the wrong thing. So who betrayed who in this situation? Well, if you were expecting your captains of industry and your leadership that you elected to for reasons, and you expected them to tell you the truth and to help you and to guide you and help you understand your situation, well, they didn't. They knew, they could have, they didn't. But likewise, if you were expecting the scientists who had the data, I saw the data, 35 years ago? If you're expecting the scientists who had the data to educate you and show you the way and raise the alarm and clang the bells and emergency, well, they didn't. Because that would be biting the hand that fed them. So they didn't. Because they had careers and families and cars and mortgages and 3 vacations annually to Disneyland. So they didn't. And I'm here, a little bit late because this is what we're dealing with now. Marine heat wave. Yeah, it's a little late. So what's going to happen? It's going to get hot, folks. And this summer is, I think, when it starts. It's already hot. We just had the hottest winter on record in the lower U.S. 48 states. We had the hottest Christmas on record at Christmas time in 2025. We just had a massive consequential heat wave that was supposed to last a few days, lasted 10 days, not over yet, okay? Blew through this country, scared everybody, scared the piss out of everybody. It's here. It never goes away. And if we thought we had until the year 2100 or maybe the year 2050 or maybe the year 2040, no, we don't. It's here. It's now. We should be talking about this, folks. We should be. You've been betrayed. And I feel like if science doesn't grow a spine and start ringing the bells and raising the alarm, we're complicit in that betrayal. I think we are. And I understand why people don't want to jeopardize their careers or get thrown in prison by Donald Trump for being a fearmonger, as will be the case soon enough. Still, we knew. Svante Arrhenius knew. Madam Foote knew. John Tyndall knew. And we knew in the 70s. We were doing the research. I saw the data in 1990. Myself, we knew. We did nothing. So now we get a die-off. Well, what's that going to look like? It's going to look like heat, folks. Hot. I said something in a forum recently. I just said, I think there's probably this summer, 1 million people will die of the heat around the world. 1 million people. I just said it. Yeah, sure, why not? 1 million people. France basically had a heat wave 12, 15 years ago. And they had like 50,000 fatalities. They had so many fatalities over such a short period of time. It took them years just to figure out what the number was. Because, it's not something, you can count the number of people that die in an airplane crash, right? It's a small number of people, and they all bought tickets to the airplane. So you can tell how many people died in an airplane crash. But when you have a heat wave that comes in, and you've got old people living over there and children living over here, and you've got hospitals full of elderly, and the power failed over there, and a bunch of people died, and people died of heat, and then people died of heart attacks, which is not the same thing, and then people died of strokes, which is not the same thing. And so who even knows what the numbers were? If a doctor says, this person died of heat, well, then that's a heat-related death. What if the doctor says, this person died of a stroke, this person died of dehydration? Was that a heat-related death? We don't know. So it took them years to find out that something like 50 or 60 or 70,000 people died in France during the heat wave. So when I said, a global event, let's see. Well, let's think about this a minute. A global event, about 1 million. Sure, why not? 100,000 in Europe. Easily. They had 50,000 in Paris alone. So 100,000 in Europe, double it. 200,000 in Europe. And maybe 300,000 in Africa. And maybe 200,000 in India alone. And another 200,000 in parts of China. And then maybe 150,000 in America by itself. Right? In South America, maybe another 100,000 people. So what's that come up to? That's probably well over 1 million. I just back of the envelope. That's probably well over 1 million right there. So it could even be 2 million. If we could have 50,000, 60, 70,000 dead in Paris because of one heat wave that lasted a week, what's going to happen if we have a massive heat wave over the entire planet surface that lasts a month? Yeah, 1 million. Easy. We'll never know. Because some of it will be heat related, and some of it will be stroke, and some of it will be dehydration, and some of it will be war. Because when people get hot, they get angry. When people run out of water, they start fighting these other people for their water. When people run out of food because of a drought, then they start fighting these other people for their food. So there will be heat related and climate related deaths through warfare. Are you going to attribute that to global heating? Probably not. You should. Why were these people shooting each other? Because some of them were running out of water. Why were these people shooting each other? Because they couldn't find food. Why were these other people shooting each other? Because they were terrified. The heat was killing them, and they had tried to escape from their situation, go to another situation. And they got to the border, and there was a big fight at the border, and gunfire, and bombs, and you Is that due to global heating? It won't be reported that way, but it is. Yeah, 1 million people dead by the end of the summer. Easy. Easy prediction. I don't know if it's going to happen, but it's within the realm. It's easy it's speculation. It's easy to speculate. And it's also easy to say, 1 million at a minimum. At a minimum. Could be worse. Well, these are just early days, folks. As this continues, as the planet continues to get hotter, as we have essentially hotter marine heat waves, as we have more types of extreme weather, as people continue to be unprepared, as our infrastructure, our electricity and our cooling and our everything else continues to be unprepared, as our food supply continues to be fragile and vulnerable, and as warfare breaks out, and as there's conflict for resources like water and food, and as all this stuff spins up over this summer and next summer and the summer after that, then what can we say about the human world? I don't think there's going to be one. I think it ends. Because this situation never improves. This situation never goes away. It only gets worse. We have to keep burning fossil fuels just to keep 8,000 million people from perishing. And we have to keep burning fossil fuels for business as usual. Because that's where our water comes from, and that's where our food comes from, and that's where our electricity comes from. And we can't stop these things now. We could have stopped them in the 70s when we weren't as dependent and the planet wasn't as hostile, but now we really can't. There's a lot of us and the planet is turning really, really angry. I mean, what do you want to call this? Is that not looking like anger to you? That's a marine heat wave. That's a global marine heat wave. Oh, and that's going to get worse. This summer, especially when El Nino shows up, there it is, brewing in the South Pacific. And when it does, I don't know what's going to happen to us. I don't know. I'm worried. Clearly, I'm worried. But I'm worried from the vantage point of data. This is not existential dread for me. I didn't just read a scary story and now I'm shaking in my boots. I'm looking at the data and I'm seeing in the data a scary story. And I first saw the scariest story in 1990 when I was working on my master's degree. It's been a scary story ever since then, but it's becoming more scary now. Could we have saved ourselves? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. I think with the right leadership and the right respect for data analysis and observation, with the right tools, maybe we could have. We wouldn't be 8,000 million people right now, probably, because we would have had to withdraw access to fossil fuels. Agriculture would have been less intense, and we wouldn't be shipping water quite as far as we're doing it now, because we wouldn't have as much technology and as much electricity and all the other things you need. We wouldn't have built our cities quite as big as they are now. We wouldn't have as many people in dangerous and imperiled situations that like they're in now. So we could have not suffered as much, I think. And we still would have had probably the 80s, right? We still would have had those great rock bands. We still would have had transportation and manufacturing and smaller cities, fewer people, less travel, more people working in agriculture, fewer people working in technology, building AI to dominate the human species, right? It could have been different. But we lost that chance. And there's no going back. There's going back. The hard way. The hard way. We're never going back to the world that we once knew. That world is gone. We will now go forward. We are going forward. But we will go forward fewer. With less. Through collapse. Because that's what must happen now. And if we don't voluntarily do that, which we're kind of sort of doing right now, we're kind of volunteering to turn off the fossil fuel. Did you notice? I mean, we're not really volunteering, but this war in the Middle East, in the Persian Gulf, was not necessary. But here we are, having one. Interesting. That's how my book kicks off. Link in the description. You might want to grab a copy. That's how my book kicks off, with a brutal exchange of weaponry in the Persian Gulf. Well, now we're talking. Yes, we're volunteering to do this. We didn't have to bomb Iran. Iran didn't have to bomb the other Persian Gulf nations, the other nations, gas producing nations in the Middle East. They didn't have to do that. Russia didn't have to invade Ukraine. Ukraine didn't have to blow up the Russian oil infrastructure, which they did and are doing to this day. It's all voluntary. We didn't have to do this, and yet here we are doing it. Well, how do I feel about that? Well, okay. Here we go, folks. Yeah, here we go. It has begun. And we're going to find ourselves without fossil fuels and without the human world made out of fossil fuels. All the driving, all the flying, all the shipping, all the manufacturing, all the water delivery, all the sewer treatment, all the water treatment, all the modern agriculture, all the fertilizers, all the medicines, all the hospitals, all the schools, all the roads, all the factories, all the government buildings, all the legislation, all the everything. We're going to find ourselves without all that, going into a massive global heat wave. Well, how do I feel about that? Well, that's a good question. Thank you for asking. How do I feel? How do I feel about all that? Well, here we are. We're doing it. We are doing it, and it is being done to us. There's no way out now, folks. There's no way out. And there needs to be no way out. No way out is the correct answer. In the 1970s, we could have said, we're going to stop this, but we didn't. We betrayed ourselves for our pleasures and our profits. And now, there's no way out. We're going into this. This is coming for us, and we are entering this place. We are going to walk this path into the uncertain future, except it's not uncertain. I know. People are going to die in large numbers. Everywhere, people are going to die. Oh, don't worry. They'll suffer first. They'll pray. They'll fight. They'll fire off all their weapons. They'll use nuclear weapons, missiles, and appeals to the gods of thunder and war. They'll do everything they have to do to try and, save themselves or push this off onto somebody else or make sure those other people suffer more, or they have to suffer first and they have to die first, and I'm going to cling to life at the edge of every nuclear weapon I can lay my hands on, and there's going to be all that, that's going to happen. And there's going to be the wars for water and the wars for food. Of course, the wars for oil will be over because that's going away now. So it's going to be the wars for oil, water, the wars for food, the wars to get out of the heat. Heading north, heading south. I did a whole video on what's going to look like to head south. Check that out. We're going there. We're going there. We're not going back. We're not going back to the 80s or the 70s or the year 500. We're not going back. We're going forward. And it's going to hurt. And it's going to be ugly. And the forward looks like this, except worse. Like this. But worse. And it never goes away. And it only gets worse. And then we will be 1% of the current population. Not 3%. Not what we used to be back in the Iron Age, 3% or so of the current population. No. 3%. Oh, that's optimistic. Oh, that's the rose-colored scenario. That's wishful thinking. That's rainbows and unicorns. 3% of the current population. Oh, yeah, that's rainbows and unicorns. No, we might be 1% of the current population. I'll save you the math. That's 80 million people. 80 million. At best. In fact, there's another way to look at this. The world is so fucked up, so hostile to human life. It has been so altered and so damaged and so polluted, and it's such a minefield of death traps that we could just stumble into, including all the cities and the freeways and everything else, this parking lots that are paved over, all the arable land that we could grow food on, but no, we can't because we did the thing, okay? Under those circumstances, maybe even 1% is unicorns and rainbows. And the thing I like to say, and it's just a number, speculation. Rather than 99 people out of 100 dying, which is 1% survival, what if it's 999 out of 1,000? And in my book, that's what happens. One of the threads in the book is the writer, the journalist who is writing the book, right? This is authorship inception. I'm writing the book, but there's a journalist in the book writing the book because it's a journal. Asks the question, where is everyone? Where is everyone? And the answer is explored slowly through the story. And you're allowed to reach your own conclusions about where is everyone. But I'll tell you now, they're dead. Hundreds of ways to leave this world. Very few ways to survive it. It was 100 days, link in the description. Get a copy, start reading. That's your homework. I wrote it for you. I do these videos for you. I'm trying to make people understand their situation. I am failing. I know that. I accept that. But really, I've been failing since the year 1990 when I first learned about this. And now I'm trying to make up for lost time. Well, okay, great. Here I am trying to make up for lost time. Do I get any credit for that? No, I guess not. Fine. I accept that. You can also help by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. YouTube cares about that kind of thing. Whatever. I mean, a year from now, people will, this time next year, March of 2027, people will have just left behind the most shattering and destroying heat wave the planet has ever seen since it's been occupied by humans, maybe even ever. Possibly ever, since the PETM for sure. That was 50 million years ago. And they'll be doing video searches. Massive global heat wave, click, 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 click. And they'll be watching this. And they'll be saying, why couldn't we have heard more of this guy a year ago, back in March of 2026? Why couldn't we have heard more from him? But, who cares what Donald Trump thinks it's a hoax? Who cares if the oil companies say it's a hoax and it's an agenda and it's a conspiracy? Of course they're going to say that. I mean, it made sense at the time and it was the right answer for me at the time because I didn't want to deal with any of this horse shit. But now it's March of 2027 and we just came through a hellscape. It's March of 2027 and we just survived a hellscape. And there's a lot of people that didn't. Now I'm doing searches on YouTube. Yeah, like and subscribe. Recommend me to your friends if you care about them. Buy the book. Buy the book for your friend. Make them read it. Read it together. Have a reading sleepover. Buy a 12-pack of beer. Buy a couple bottles of wine. Sit around and talk about the book. Read the book. Talk about the book. Figure it out. How can you apply yourself? How can you make what happened for you what happened in the book? How can you be those people? How can you be those people? The 1 in 1,000. The 1/10 of 1%. The people who didn't disappear. How about we stop there? Wasn't that lovely? Oh, wasn't that lovely? Aren't I a wonderful person? Aren't I just fabulous? Well, you know what makes me this way? This is what makes me the person that I am. Marine heat waves and a coming Godzilla El Nino and the warmest winter on record just closed out meteorologically, and the hottest Christmas on record happened during that time. And this is why I am the way I am, because I get it and I'm not in denial. And I'm going to teach you the same thing. You need to get it and you need to be not in denial. So I'll be back here soon. I don't know when. Like I say, I'm kind of What am I supposed to think? What am I supposed to do? Every day I come back here and I do this. Why? What good does it do? All right, I'll write another book. I'm writing another book. God only knows why I do that either. This is the adult conversation. Should have happened in the 70s, should have happened in the 80s, didn't. Now we're having it. You can carry this through. You can have this adult conversation with other people, and they'll hate you for it, and they'll unfriend you, and they'll cancel their subscription or whatever else. But you have to do it. We have to do this. We need to save as many people as we can. Get them to the lifeboats. Make them understand. Because this is coming. This is here. We're going to find out. This is our FAFO moment. We're all about to find out. This time next year, we're going to be having a different story about the world. I think. In the meantime, don't die.